Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we are back again with yet another rank 4 6-star showcase. This time it is Mr. Fantastic. So we have to say huge thank you to Pokezach for sending us through all the footage, and he definitely did send through quite a few. So this video might be quite lengthy this time around, but we're definitely going to see a lot of interesting utility bits from Mr. Fantastic. And as many of you know, Mr. Fantastic is getting more and more kind of traction and popularity over the last, let's say, half a year. There are already a couple of rank 4s out there that are known, and it's one of the champions that I personally absolutely love as well. I do have one at rank 3 at the moment, I think about Sig 100. And it's only a matter of time till I will take my Mr. Fantastic up to rank 4 as well. If I had gotten a Science rank-up gem from Act 7, Mr. Fantastic was one of the top 2 frontrunners. It would have either been Overseer or Mr. Fantastic, but if it would have been Overseer, it would have largely been because he's ahead in the Prestige game, and that is something that I do take into consideration. So right here we can see that he's amping up quite quickly. He already got the Careful Study passive from the level 1. In shorter fights, that is all you really want to do. In super long fights, sometimes you do want to get level 2 Careful Study passive as well. And the best way to do that is to let your debuffs fall off intentionally at the beginning of the fight, and then get Careful Study passive for level 2 initially, and then go for your Careful Study passive for level 1. But now is where the real fun begins. So at 50 hit mark, when Winter Soldiers are already halfway down, you do get the Big Fury from level 3. And that level 3 is quite accessible thanks to all the increased power gain that you get. Power rate, combat power rate. And we can see that at this point that Winter Soldier is absolutely melting despite the class disadvantage. 37k heavy attack there, very easy finish, and Winter Soldier is dead. Right, let's go through all of these files one by one. I do believe that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more fights or 10 more files to show you guys. So this is going to be against Loki. Let's see how this works out. I didn't actually notice which Loki it is exactly, but Mr. Fantastic is one of those extremely versatile champions where often you don't necessarily think he would work, but he does. And that's the thing that I love about him. For instance, every time I have bought in Mr. Fantastic in Incursions, he has proved his worth, and so on and so forth. In Act 7, he has definitely been extremely useful, especially when there are some tricky fights. This Hubris node is perfect for Mr. Fantastic if you have synergy with She-Hulk, giving you power stings and obviously letting you control the fight extremely well. And it's kind of a child's play. I remember cheesing that entire lane with Mr. Fantastic in mere minutes. So that was definitely evident in this fight as well, thanks to the Hubris node. Now we're going to be going up against Hyperion that has Bubble Shield, Aspect of Evolution, improved power gain, power, brute force, and that did seem like a very, very nasty Hyperion. We can see that it's 50 KPI as well. And the beautiful thing is that you do mitigate a lot of combat power rate, not just ability power rate with Mr. Fantastic, and that is not something a lot of champions can do. Typically, it's one or the other. But here in this situation, we can see that Mr. Fantastic is going to be able to also combat Hyperion's regular power rate. And now, once he will get the Careful Study passive here, at this very moment, he is making sure that he can, get better control of the fight, increase the power gain of his own. And thanks to Taunt on level 1, you can combat, obviously, the power gains as well. Now, unfortunately, it looks like he is going to end up eating level 3 to the face here. But that is not before he applies his second set of debuffs. And at this point, we're going to definitely notice that Mr. Fantastic is also quite a tanky dude himself. Even though he eats that level 3 from Hype, he still remains at like 69% of the power. Plus, there is a bit of adrenaline healing potential. And past this point, with 2 Petrifies active, there shouldn't be too much issue with the improved power gain from Hyperion at all. That's one of the things that's kind of characteristic to Mr. Fantastic compared to, let's say, Void. That is that his, let's say, power reversal might not have as much top ceiling potential. Void can reverse more power, but Mr. Fantastic has that consistency. You do not rely on RNG or perfect conditions. So we have Hyperion go down here, even after a couple of level 3s. Now we once again have Doctor Strange here with That's Gonna Sting, Backfire, Power Alternator. So let's see how well Mr. Fantastic can deal with this fight. And obviously Doctor Strange has absolutely no combat power rate, so that power suppression debuff isn't going to really do much here at the moment. However, Doctor Strange does fully rely on his ability power rate, so that Petrify is already putting in solid amount of work from the very beginning of the fight, reducing all power gain Doctor Strange is getting by 40%. So as soon as he's going to get to first level 2, but it doesn't seem like it will happen because of that's gonna sting node. Now, unfortunately, here misshoots the level 1, but that doesn't even matter too much. And here, let's see, just Doctor Strange just dies. That was once again courtesy to the power sting effects. Mr. Fantastic definitely is one of those champions that I highly recommend everybody to have access to. Not just because of his own utility and versatility, which he has spades of. In my personal opinion, Mr. Fantastic is definitely a top 5 science champion, if not top 3 science champion. But also, he does benefit a lot of the team and the teammates that you can bring alongside, giving all the tech champions the power sting ability and everything else. So this is that weird stun node from the Cav EQ, where opponents continuously go unblockable, but every time you evade, you gain some extra damage, and every time you knock down the opponents, you gain a evade charge, which again, obviously, with natural evade that Mr. Fantastic has, it will be very easy for you to benefit from this node, and you don't need to worry about much about that unblockable the opponents have. So here 17 armors. I swear to God, Civil Warrior gets an armor up every time you look at him weird. Civil Warrior dashes back, he gets an armor up. Civil Warrior, I don't know, eats his breakfast, he gets an armor up. That dude is pain in the ass in the war recently. Okay, now we're going up against Hood. So let's check out the Hood fight here. So you saw the nodes just now. And just going to be another absolute domination example of this Mr. Fantastic. One of the coolest things that a lot of people are not fully aware is that champions' combat power rate is also tied to their rank, and there are champions that benefit from it more than others. And Mr. Fantastic is definitely one of those champions that does benefit from it quite highly, because the quicker you get your special attacks, obviously the quicker you can set up, and the easier it is to keep your debuffs up, and all that other good stuff. Now we can see that once again he utilized the what is it, Fate Seal? No, it's not Fate Seal, it's Stagger from his level 1 to get rid of the Hood's invisibility buff. And now that Hood is just getting curb stomped in the corner, basically. So he used his level 1 there. Wonderful, no problem. He's going for a level 2 of his own. And at this point, I remember this node. This path is actually one of the biggest nightmare paths in Act 7, where opponents do get a ton of extra power, and you can prevent it to a degree with your Underweight or Power Lock, but it consistently keeps eating up your debuffs. Mr. Fantastic was by far the best option for me for this entire lane. I actually kind of made it a point to use only Fantastic Four and Mr. Fantastic for this entire path, and he did it without a single item required. So Mr. Fantastic is a beast for this thing. This node, I remember, this node was such a pain. Here we go. Next fight, we have Green Goblin. So this is, where is it? Redlining, Power Reserve, Cramping. Oh, that sounds like quite a nasty Green Goblin, especially because of the Power Reserve. If there's one thing you do not want to deal often with, it is Green Goblin's special spamming, because those specials are just awkward, they are multi-hit, the level 1 is finicky to dex at times, it can catch you in surprise, and level 2 is finicky, and the level 1 is just flat out annoying. But here we can see that with the redlining, you can actually benefit from that, alongside with Power Reserve, from being able to set up extremely quickly, because you do have increased power rate from 1 to 2 bars of power, and using Power Reserve obviously enables you to save half of the power. So with that we can see that the Goblin isn't really all that capable of throwing that many special attacks. Now he drops to level 1, and now Green Goblin, as we can see, is below a bar of power, and here is going to be the important bit. Check out the power rate on Green Goblin. He really isn't getting all that much power whilst being struck. Can't really see too well because it's behind my head here. But 1 second. Why is it not disappearing? Go away. There you go. But obviously, Mr. Fantastic has some of the best combat power rate suppression abilities in the game, which in this case is pretty much the best way to deal with this stupid annoying Green Goblin. And you can just go on, spam your level 1s, you get multiples of incinerates, and you can get your taunt on, your heal block, and everything else, thanks to synergies. So Green Goblin can't regenerate either. Realistically, even if you would, if you have a single point in despair, that's taken away pretty much automatically there. And yeah, we can see how little power Green Goblin is getting and how much specials Mr. Fantastic is spamming there. So he is still, you know, at a few percent health, but the fight is pretty much over. This definitely did look like quite a nasty Green Goblin as well. So, wait, this is the Winter Soldier that I showed you already. So let's move on to the next one. This is going to be Symbiote Supreme. And didn't manage to catch nodes again, but let's see what's going to happen here. Oh, so this is the 6.21 boss, the Life Cycle Symbiote Supreme. And yeah, I remember this fight. Mr. Fantastic is just perfect to destroy this entire fight because you're going to keep knocking down the opponent anyhow. There is pretty much nothing to be nullified on the Mr. Fantastic in kind of generic circumstances. And then on top of that, obviously, with your level 2s, you can completely get rid of Symbiote Supreme's power for majority of the fight. Even with 2 petrifies only, you already reduce the ability power gain by like 80%. And you can just go ahead and have fun. Now, Mr. Fantastic is one of those champions that I do feel like is getting a very large amount of attention on my channel. And I do plan on making a Mr. Fantastic videos, well, again, and more showcases, because I do generally think a large portion of the player base is still sleeping on the guy. And his damage is underrated just because he doesn't have particularly big yellow numbers. And his utility is insanely underrated. But now we have Heavy Assault Prey on a Weak Tigra. I do think this is a boss from one of the recent quests, because she is genuinely stacked. So this is 86k Tigra. Very stacked Tigra. But Heavy Assault obviously is going to help Mr. Fantastic because he is a champion that quite frequently does throw those heavy attacks. And we can see that even without any setup here, you're already dealing a ton of damage, especially when you crit. And now he just needs to bait out that level 1. Perfect. Punish that with a heavy attack. Sweet. Use a level 2 of his own. And that gives him second sets of debuffs, which obviously is gonna, you know, let him do more damage. Another thing is that the more debuffs on the opponent, the more damage for Mr. Fantastic, period. Even if you do not get to that level 3 for the Big Fury, every single debuff on the opponent gives Mr. Fantastic more damage. And here at this point, let's hope for a big crit. I would wish that Mr. Fantastic had a higher crit chance, though. I really wish it would. But here we go, the third level 2. And we have all debuffs, and that is a 43k heavy attack there. Very easy, and the Tigra ain't got nothing. Also careful, Study Passive is already active. And yeah, that's all there is to that Tigra. She's done and dusted. And as a final fight for you guys, I have left Labyrinth of Legends fight against Old Man Logan. So he is using full Fantastic Four team, and alongside that, he has Magneto House of X just to get that passive parry stun in. I'm not actually entirely sure what is the most damage kind of team for Mr. Fantastic, because he does have so many cool synergies with different champions that there are definitely several ways you can go about it. Like, it's also worth exploring the Mr. Fantastic with several versions of himself synergy, because that gives him substantial damage boost for each additional copy of Mr. Fantastic you carry alongside. And in Act 7, I actually kind of like to do that sometimes, because I happen to have 5-star Mr. Fantastic and 6-star Mr. Fantastic, and both of them are obviously perfectly viable. And you can just do so much more damage just by carrying 2 copies of this fantastic champion. And obviously, when you want to make some cheesy high damage videos, then adding in the 4-star and 3-star can enhance that even further. Here we go. So he has already set up with all 3 of his debuffs and Careful Study passive active. Old Man Logan's at 86%, and now the strategy is going to be largely spam as many heavy attacks as you can, get your level 3s quickly, and just benefit from that huge fury. Now, one thing that I would have done differently perhaps for this fight Well, maybe in this fight it wouldn't make that much of a difference overall, but definitely in 3.3 million Labyrinth fights, I would drop the debuffs at the beginning, let Old Man Logan get to his level 2s, and get careful study passives from those level 2s. Maybe intentionally take a hit from the second level 2 to get that careful study passive quicker, and then get the level 1s, because then you would have even higher combat power rate. And then you would just be spamming your specials all day long, basically. And now we can see that as soon as you do get to that level 3, the damage increases extremely substantially for each debuff. And that's perfect, because then obviously you can deal with these larger health pool fights. Like, not a lot of people know, but when we do that 3-star Realm of Legends challenge, where we need to use, She-Hulk, Magneto, and so on and so forth, Mr. Fantastic actually is the higher damage output champion behind She-Hulk. So for any fight where you cannot use She-Hulk, Mr. Fantastic actually is the second best option, despite what people think. Like, for instance, he well outpaces Namor in fights where Namor has class advantage and Mr. Fantastic has class disadvantage, and he outpaces the rest of the champions as well. And most people don't think that way, because you do not see particularly large individual numbers. But even despite that, your baseline damage, we can see here, even when that heavy attack doesn't crit, you still do like 13k damage. And on top of that, also the fact that you gain so much more power, an opponent hardly gains power, it just makes those fights so much easier when, you don't really have to bait out special attacks, which is typically the time when you mess up, and you can just spam your specials and get that level 3 Fury and so on and so forth. So this Labyrinth of Legends fight is going to be over in like 130 hits in like, 2 minutes? We're going to take a look at the stats from a champion that's, wildly not considered hard hitting. So 3 minutes, 150 hits. And I do think that it can be done a bit quicker, maybe, well, potentially. But either way, there's no Liquid Courage, no Double Edge involved. Labyrinth of Legends fight done in 150 hits. I think that's definitely respectable. Obviously, we do have champions with higher damage output. But Mr. Fantastic has much more damage than a lot of people realize. And the best thing is, he combines that with insane amounts of utility. He, in my opinion, at the moment is one of the most versatile champions that we have available to us. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this Mr. Fantastic showcase. If you did, hit that like button, hit that sub button, hit all the good buttons, and I shall be back soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the next